Welcome to Suddenly Different, where we explore stories and strategies for life when it doesn't go to plan. I'm Leigh-Anne Sharland, inviting you to join me on this journey. What happens when the thing you most fear becomes the place your purpose is waiting? My guest today is Karim Boktor, founder of the Boktor Method, high-performance hypnotherapist, leadership performance specialist, and creator of Championship Through Leadership. Karim works with elite athletes, leaders, coaches, executives, and high-performance teams in environments where the pressure is enormous and the margins are tiny. At that level, everyone has talent. Everyone is training. Everyone is chasing the next edge. But Karim looks somewhere many people still avoid. Underneath. Under the strategy, under the performance, under the decision-making, under the confidence, under the pressure. Because sometimes the things holding people back is not skill, effort, or opportunity. It is the subconscious pattern running quietly in the background. But Karim's work did not begin in boardrooms, elite clubs, or sporting arenas. It began in his own life. Karim came to Australia from Egypt with his family after facing persecution. His parents had to rebuild from almost nothing, and at one point the family found themselves homeless and living in housing commission. During those early years, Karim developed a severe stutter. For a child whose world had already changed dramatically, even his voice became difficult to rely on. And yet, today, the boy who struggled to speak has become a man who speaks on stages, has delivered a TEDx talk, and helps others find the blocks they cannot always see. This conversation is about voice, but not just the voice we hear. It's about our inner voice, the quiet hesitation, the fear of being seen, the patterns we carry from childhood, and the identity we build around survival. And then what becomes possible when we stop trying to fix ourselves on the surface and begin listening to what is happening underneath. Karim, welcome to Suddenly Different.
Thank you for having me. That was a really great intro. Thank you.
My pleasure. I really like to understand the human who is on the podcast, right? I love to explore the suddenly different moments, and I know we have lots of them in our lives, but the moments that take us on that trajectory that have led us to where we are today, knowing we have no idea where we go tomorrow. So tell me a little bit about you.
I think you summed it up really well in the intro. Yeah, pretty much. I came here when I was about 2. My parents escaped persecution. Mum and dad had a really successful business in Egypt, wholesaling petrol. Big, right?
Yeah.
So his dad was like an entrepreneur. He started off as a farmer. And then, created this mammoth business in Egypt. But then, he started was becoming a target for other extremists. And they said that pretty much if you don't leave, we'll kill your family. Very blatant. One day, my dad was telling me he was just sitting inside his apartment in Egypt with his family. I was there as well, but I can't remember. I was too young. And he was saying that one day men were driving around the streets of Egypt with big microphones. They had a list. And in that list were the people who they were going to kill. And just on the microphone, on the speakers, they were just blatantly driving around, calling out the people who they were going to kill. And on that list, they yelled out, Amir Boktor. And there it was. It's like, these guys don't bluff. These guys don't, it's just a warning shot. And very quickly, he found himself in another country without the language, without a job, without a house. And people are thinking, well, if he was so successful, why were you in housing commissions? Why couldn't you just buy a house. You guys were loaded. The problem is that the money that was meant to be transferred over from his accountant wasn't transferred. The accountant did some dodgy stuff. He didn't transfer it, and we were homeless. Yeah, we didn't have money. We didn't have anything, and so we were stuck in another country. My dad was, mum and dad had 3 kids. And yeah, at that time, I didn't know what was going on. But I think, speaking about the subconscious, on a deeper level, I felt scarcity. I felt scared. I probably have seen things in the housing commissions that I shouldn't have. School uniform wasn't a thing. Sometimes I would have uniform, sometimes I wouldn't. Sometimes, in the midst of everything, I remember one day I was in prep and mum had packed me lunch. But I think, like, out of the scarcity, I had eaten all of my lunch and recess all on recess. And so when it came to lunch, the teacher thought that I didn't have lunch. And so she looked at me and she's probably thinking, poor thing, I was hungry. But those were just the signals in my mind of the filter and the lens that I was looking through at life. I couldn't have, reading books like other kids. I wasn't allowed to go here. I wasn't allowed to go there. Not because my parents didn't want to give them to me, just because I felt that scarcity. I wanted to protect them. So I never asked for those things. Uniforms, all those types of things, excursions, going here, there, going there. I always felt that I couldn't have things like other kids. That this was my belief. And this was the belief that I grew up with.
I recognize that very much in myself. And I thank you very much for sharing that. And I'm sure there'll be lots of listeners who possibly can think back to a time in their childhood when they took on the responsibility of the decision making around money and they protected their parents from having to say no or having to struggle to find the money. I know I personally left high school, because I saw a letter of demand from the college I was going to my family, because mum and dad couldn't afford to pay the school fees because they were going bankrupt. And even though it was a Catholic college, it still was a financial institution. And so they wanted money. So I, against all of my teachers, I myself decided to end school at year 11. And that changed the trajectory of my life. And I know that my parents wouldn't have wanted me to make that decision if they'd known the basis of it. But so during, I'm curious about during that time, and I understand that like well-formed belief that you had. Did your parents, did their English improve? Did they find community? Did they reestablish themselves?
The good thing out of all of this is that they had community. I think
Yes.
the reason why we came to Melbourne was because there was a community. And I think it was like the best community. Like, we had cousins, we had family, and I think that was like the best, right? It was like the saving grace. Yeah, we developed the language. I mean, obviously, mum and dad went to English school. They had jobs that they had to go to and they were forced to learn the language. But this all obviously came after. But yes.
Yes. But meanwhile, as a child, you and your siblings are all deciding how the world works and what the rules are and what the beliefs are to keep you safe.
Absolutely.
Which we'll talk about later is how you got into the line of work that you do and how powerful you are, because I've witnessed that power. So when you were at school, were you still learning English when you were in early primary school?
When I was 2, so the only language that I knew like when I started school, was English.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, but that's the same language that I knew. However,
Right.
the problem is that I couldn't speak, because I could speak, but I felt like I was ashamed when I did speak. So the teachers assumed that I couldn't speak English, and that's why I didn't want to speak. But by then,
Right.
I was like the most Aussie kid. In fact, my favorite song was I Am Australian, right? And I love it till this
Right.
day. I love
Yeah.
being an Aussie.
Yeah.
However, they thought, oh, he just came from Egypt. But by then I had been there in Australia for like 3-4 years. I was pretty much a Vegemite kid.
Yeah.
But so then they put me into ESL.
Right.
It's like at that moment, it's like where the dumb kids go. This is what the kids thought, right? This is what I thought.
Yeah.
And so I was in there of that belief that I was a dumb kid. I must be. Right? They put me into ESL because I had a really bad stutter and I didn't want to speak.
Right.
And so teachers didn't really bother asking, and I think that's the thing that really grinded like looking back at it now, and
Mhm.
I'm sure it's different today, but they just put me in a box,
Yeah.
uh,
I
and they
I
just
I think I think teachers today still do that. I to be honest, I've overheard
Mhm,
some of them talking, but they're because they don't have time or resource to put the care into connecting with the children,
mm,
because the bureaucratic element of schooling is overwhelming.
yeah, it can be for sure.
So yeah, so that is the sad thing about us as children and the situation as it is today, that children can develop beliefs about themselves that they're not smart or they're different because they've been put in a class to help them, but they see it as punishment or degradation rather than support.
Mhm.
So with your stutter, what did you make the stutter mean? So as you got older
Mhm.
and as you were in that class, did your stutter reduce or was it that protective for you?
Um, it didn't reduce. I reckon it came in waves. Like, at times it got really bad,
Mhm.
and I just couldn't say certain letters or certain words without stuttering, so I tried to use other words or I just didn't speak at all.
Mhm.
And I think the thing that it meant for me is that I couldn't express myself. And I became
Mhm.
this guy that just accepted stuff. And I just took
Right.
things on because I couldn't express myself. And I didn't know what I
Mhm.
wanted. I didn't know, how to say no a lot of the times. I didn't know how to ask for things. And I think that's the meaning that I'd given it. It's just I conceded. And I
Yeah.
became this guy that, just went along with anything that the world gave me because I didn't want to ask. I didn't know how to ask or want things. I didn't know how to express myself.
So you said that you were a real Aussie kid, right? So you were a
Mhm.
Vegemite kid. Did you play footy and join in sports and chasey and all those sorts of things with the kids?
You know what's funny? So my brother is like the footy kid. He's like the jock,
Right?
right? He played footy. He did all these things. He played for Essendon reserves. Looking back, I've always been the philosopher. I've always been the daydreamer.
Yeah.
My favorite subject was learning about about Aboriginal history and the dream
Oh,
time. So I
yeah.
really connected with that spirituality and that spiritual world. So whenever they spoke about those stories and the dream time, it was like I could really connect. And so up until today, like people are one of the first things that some clients ask me. Well, now they know because they know a lot about me. Is some of the questions is, do you know how did you play footy or did you play NFL? Did you play basketball? And I'm like, I don't know anything about sports. I love playing sports. I love being
Mhm.
involved. I love being physical, but I'm not really a footy fan, sports fan. And so I'm more of a philosopher. I like getting, like you introduced me correctly, right? It's like
Mhm.
It's like, you know me. I like getting in deep. The reason,
Mm,
behind the why things happen. I love the depth and really understanding all the intricacies. And when I look at someone, it's like I'm looking through them. I
mhm,
want to understand what's happening deep, not the superficial stuff.
mhm.
So yeah, I've always been connected that way.
So did you have like a small group of close friends, or did you did you
No, so growing up, I was like, I was the only Egyptian kid in the class. And when I say
yeah,
Egyptian, I mean like brown skinned, right? It's
yeah,
like in this part of school, a lot of them were just, Anglo kids, white kids. And so on top of the stutter, on top of the being the chubby kid, I didn't have friends. And so I grew up believing that just no one liked me. Just I wasn't a person that no one liked. And one of the most heartbreaking things that I could think about was seeing my mum when like mum would be like, "Hey, did you want to bring home a friend from school?" And I'm like, "Mum, but no one wants to play with me." So one day I had to bring home like I went down the ranks and I asked like someone that was a year younger than me or 2 years younger if they wanted to come over and play with me because no one in my year level wanted to come over. I would ask everyone, they'll be like, no. And I think that broke like it really broke my mum's heart of why is this, my son's a beautiful boy, how mums are. It's like
yeah,
they're the most beautiful things to them. So, growing up, I had to really grind and like, you know, just do without in a lot of cases. And those were one of those things. Until I got older and I had to really like up the ante. I moved schools and then I was like, there must be a problem with me. So I must, why don't I be kinder? Right? Why don't I be like, and that's when I started giving myself like more of myself away. It's like I have to
uh-huh,
perform. I have to do all these things then to be liked. And it worked, obviously.
yeah,
I
yeah,
was the class clown. I was really trusted by my peers and all that kind of thing, but it came at a price. It came at a cost. I was constantly wearing a mask and I felt that if at that point it just became like an identity that I built,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
But it came from a place of lack.
yeah,
But yeah, that was just the way, yeah, that I decided that had to give away more and do more.
yeah. But it was a mask. It wasn't at that point. It wasn't a release of the inside who you were.
No,
It
no.
was performance.
It was performance. It was like, oh my gosh, what if people realized that at the other school, what I was really
Mm,
like, right?
mm,
And so I couldn't let
mm.
and the show had to go on.
Yes, and isn't that really interesting how we get the opportunity to recreate ourselves when we go into new opportunities, right? Whether it be new jobs, new schools, when we move house to a new area, we we get to think that we can start being somebody else. Life will be different, but we forget that we're taking ourselves along for the ride. And deep down inside, we are who we are until we get an opportunity to look at that and change. So, did you have anyone in your life that was a peer or like a mentor for you? So, once you got to that a little bit more outgoing, a bit more open, a bit more accepted in the community, but knowing that you weren't being real, did you have somebody who was showing you leadership?
I think my first experience, and this is a very like I'm 41, right? And
Yeah.
it's still a very big moment in my life. When I moved to a new school, a year or two later, there was a teacher, Mrs. Lee, and she just was like, "I see something in you, and I see that magic, and I'm going to bring it out of you. And she saw something behind me that no one else really wanted, bothered, even cared for.
Yeah.
And it wasn't long when she brought those things out of me that I became school captain. I
Wow.
started being a popular kid, and so I started to flourish. And that was a very big moment. It's like, oh my gosh, all it took was for someone just to really give me that extra bit of attention, just to really understand me. And I could turn, like, I was one of the top kids in the class. Everything was easy. I was popular. That was the first real moment of real leadership.
Yeah. Because sometimes we do need a real leader to show us what it looks like, right? And that they can see it in us. Because if we don't know what it looks like, we haven't felt what it feels like, haven't heard it, how can we be it? Right? Because even on television, you still don't, like, it's a TV show. It's not real.
Mm.
So for that teacher to have seen you and felt that there was something more in you than you were showing. So that person who came out, the school captain, the popular guy, was that real or was that a mask?
In that moment, I felt like I needed to be here. Like, it felt so like this is my place. I felt like I could lead people.
Yes.
I felt like, this is a place where I can actually make a difference. And I think
Wow.
I had a taste. Then I'm like, oh my God, hang on. ESL didn't really, and not to say anything bad about it, but like I've just felt like I was finally seen for who I am.
Yeah.
And that's when, yeah, I just started to flourish more and started to think, oh, hang on, if other people can believe in me
Yeah.
and hang on, I can do this, and people have voted for me to
Yes.
be here, then I must be good. I must be a great
Yeah.
leader. I must be doing something right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That to have come from where you came from and to during your childhood had those experiences and those opportunities. It is so interesting that you have become the coach and mentor and master that you are in your craft.
Mm.
So when I heard you speak, there was something about you talked somewhere when I wasn't deeply immersed in experiencing a wonderful journey, there was an idea of an inner stutter, right? That we may not have an outer stutter that stops us from communicating and stops us from being fully visible to the people around us, but that you've discovered an inner stutter that can block us from being all of who we can be. I wonder if you could explain that.
Absolutely. So when I did my TED talk, I wanted to give something away. And I knew that the majority of the population don't have a physical stutter. They don't have you know, but what I did know is that they had an inner stutter. They have these beliefs, they have these handbrakes, they have these fears that allow them not to do what they feel like they can achieve in life. And it's not because there are lack of opportunities. Sometimes there is, but most of the time we can create our own opportunities, right? And so the story that we tell within ourselves allows us to have this inner stutter. Maybe it's that promotion that we want to go for at work. Maybe it's opening up that new business. Maybe it's having those tough conversations, right? Leaving that relationship, joining the relationship. It's not something that is outside. It's inside that stops us. That's the inner stutter. And I wanted to share that idea with potentially the billions of people that could be watching that TEDx, of how I can connect with them and allow them to see that this inner stutter that you have is fake. It's not real. It's someone else's belief that you've borrowed. It's an idea that has been seeded within you that you have decided upon and agreed upon, and this is now your identity. And because it's just an idea, right? That's there's no gun to your head. There's not a brick physical wall. There's no physical handcuffs. All you have to do is undecide. And I think that's the magic and that's the beauty. It's like once you can see beyond the veil, you'll know that it's all just been fake. It's all just an illusion of keeping you stuck. And that has been true not only for me, but for other people that have seen beyond that.
That makes absolute sense to me. I feel like at times there's do you remember tuck shops and the tuck shop, the sort of rolly door
Yes.
that would come down or come up? Well, I sort of associate with that tuck shop window, right? Of how automatically it can open and it can be closed, right? And it's like sometimes when I'm talking to someone, I can feel them shutting it, or based on an expression of their face, movement of their body, I can shut it really quickly.
Yes.
But most of the time, I'm not aware of it.
Yes.
So it's learning how to be aware of the stutter or the inner stutter, like noticing that it's happening, noticing that chatter in our mind.
Yes. Yes. And that's the part that I love diving into, right? It's like people have this parasite inside of them that's making all these decisions, right?
Yep.
And no one's even batting an eye of questioning this.
Yep.
Everyone's in a trance.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, especially when we're doing things that we often do or we automatically do. I reckon, I worked 40 years in corporate and, I don't know how many days that is. I don't know how many hours, but I know that the large percentage of it, I reckon I was in trance. Yeah. Now, sometimes that was a good trance and I would have ideas come into my mind, but a lot of the time I don't know whether it was really productive.
And so I like to use the analogy of a lot of us drive to a destination. We drive to work, maybe we drive to drop off the kids somewhere, footy practice or soccer practice. And we get to the end of the destination and we don't even remember driving there. Right? And so we end up at this destination and you think to yourself, oh my gosh, I don't even remember that trip. How did I get here? How did I weave in and out of traffic, avoid death with kids in the car? So if you weren't driving you, then who or what was? Your subconscious.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yep.
And people are like, oh my gosh, I've never thought of that before. And regardless of driving, it's how we live our life. Right? It's through those subconscious things that we don't even know that is driving our behaviors. And then we get to the end of the year, we get to the end of the month, and we're thinking, how am I here again? I've promised that I was going to be different this year. I've promised that I made a New Year's resolution.
Mhm.
And so why do I keep getting stuck?
Mm.
Why can't I be where I want to be? I'm doing everything right. And so we blame luck, we blame there's a cloud over our head. We blame life. We blame the government. And we give up because it becomes exhausting. But what people aren't told is that you're constantly going like fighting an uphill battle if you don't understand the subconscious and how powerful it is. And so the subconscious mind contributes to 95% of our behavior.
Yes.
And we're trying to tackle things and change things on a conscious level, which is only about 5%. And I'm like, of course, you're going to lose every time.
So how do you how does it work? Do you do something consciously and eventually it goes into the unconscious, or like it just floats down into that underwater stuff, or
So as an example,
Mhm.
Leigh-Anne, what's 1 plus 1?
2?
Good. How did you know that it was 2?
I actually looked at in my mind, I drew 1 plus 1 and I remembered that 2 used to get put at the end of it.
Good. You didn't have that at top of mind. You didn't have
No.
1 plus 1 is 2 consciously. Like you're
No,
not
no.
walking around thinking 1 plus 1 is 2, 1 plus 1 is 2, 1 plus 1 is 2.
No. No.
Right. That information is stored somewhere
Mhm.
for safekeeping.
Mm.
It's stored at the subconscious mind.
Yeah.
Right? And something tells me that you're very visual.
I am. I often
Right?
see
Because you told me
things.
that you saw the
Yeah.
actual visual, right? It's like
Yeah.
some people are audio. Some people are more kinesthetic.
Yeah.
Right? All of that happens at a split second. You told me it was 2 in like 0.5 of a second. Yet you went through all that processing,
Mm.
right, very quickly, and it went all the way down. It went through internal filters, and it went to a place where you kept all those memories, all those beliefs, right? And that's how we decide things. It happens at a split second. And that's how we make our decisions.
Wow. Based on our accumulated learning.
Yes. So there's an
And
equation, right? So
yeah.
where you are today,
Yeah.
right, if you were to have like an equal sign,
Yeah.
equals today and now,
Yeah.
is the sum of your conscious mind
Mhm.
and your subconscious mind equals where you are here right now.
Mhm.
So everything that has happened to you logically and consciously, plus everything that sits in the subconscious mind equals where you are here right now today.
Mm. That's pretty big.
Yeah.
That's a lot of
Since
information.
right. Right. And so when you're talking about like you as a person, you're not really diving into the subconscious stuff because it's something that you haven't even thought about or realized that it actually exists. It contributes to 95% of your stuff, right? Yet you
Yeah.
haven't really looked at it. And
Well,
so then when you talk about organizations, that's only one person that I'm talking about. When you're talking about leading organizations and people are saying leading people is the hardest thing, bloody oath.
Mhm.
Like we're just talking about one person right now.
Mhm.
Imagine that this is like if you're talking about an organization full of 50 or 100 people, 20, whatever it is, you have to navigate people through their own subconscious.
Mhm. Through their
That's
own
a whole other ballgame.
limits. Yeah.
Your own limits, but not only like If you're a founder or a business owner of a organization, everyone has their own limitations, everyone has their own story, everyone has their own subconscious
Mm-hmm.
that you have to like navigate through and lead people through.
Yeah.
And so whenever they do like workshops or like, team building stuff, they're only very like box ticking exercises. There's no real change, I don't believe. It's very, very outdated because you haven't really understood their subconscious. They don't even know their own thing, right? And so you're all meant to arrive at one place, but it's hard if everyone's all over the place with their own beliefs and their own values.
I 4.5 years ago, I suddenly finished work. Right, I had a health situation, and probably in the last 6 to 12 months, I've been able to objectively look back at my subconscious drivers of some of my behaviours, and looking at that bias that I had in me, that fear, those things, and how somebody who was more aware in a leadership role could have helped both the company and myself to be great. It's really interesting to see, right? So in
Mm.
knowing my childhood stuff and my rules and my
Uh-huh.
beliefs.
Uh-huh.
And so are you able to help leadership teams and even just interested people to untap how they get to know their own unconscious so they can better understand their team?
Definitely. So step one is knowing more about you,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And if you can understand you first,
Mm-hmm.
then you're like, well, if this applies to me, then I can see it in Mary, I can see it in John, and I can lead better.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole equation changes
Mm.
because it becomes now they're seeing it from a more dynamic perspective. It's not just a 1D or a 2D thing.
Mm-hmm.
They can see it from now a world where they have never seen before. And so they've got more data, they've got more information, they can come from a place like they're more empowered to make those decisions. And more often than not, it's like it helps the whole company perform, it helps people go home happier, right? And
Yeah.
this is my why. And one day I remember, like, when I was maybe in grade 4 or grade 5, mum and dad were working, like, multiple jobs while my mum had to go study at uni to get qualified. And one day I remember it was at, like, night, and I was, like I was waiting up for my mum to come home. And she would often one day I remember she came home and she was just, like, crying, emotionally, like, just really down. And my dad was like, "What's wrong? Are you okay?" And I remember watching the whole situation. And I remember her saying how much of a mean manager she had, and how, like, just micromanage and, like, how, like, not caring about other things. It's just like, hard line manager, right? I remember thinking, why does it have to be this way? Like, why couldn't that manager, like, I'm sure that person, if they managed correctly, if they led correctly, they can both have a really good employee, a really good result, and my mum can come home happy, and I could be connected to my mum. And I think at that moment when I was like 4 or 5, in grade 4 or 5, I realized that I needed to make a change. It was like one of the things that I had experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And so my philosophy is that if I can help the guys at the top, the leaders, the founders, the CEOs, it all trickles down. And between you and me, what I do is not because of performance. It's because I want kids to live a more connected life with their parents.
Well, I used to use data. So I worked in IT and data. So my goal was I'd worked so many long hours and missed out on my children that I wanted others to get time with their children. So I implemented systems and automated processes and taught them and everything for very similar reason, because just because I'd missed out didn't mean that I wanted anyone else to miss out. So I was probably the opposite manager to my own detriment, because I wanted people to have lives with their families and want to have lives with their families and not be stressing. So there's so many things that we're aligned on, and you have the power to influence these elite athletes and coaches and executives, because being in the elite athlete arena, there is a lot of kudos in that, and a lot of influence in that. Are the elite athletes and executives, do they have similar problems to the everyday person?
The one thing that I've learned is that everyone's got the same problems.
Right.
That everyone wants to feel like their problems are special.
Yes.
And especially if we look upon and we look up to these, magnificent, people that have achieved
Mm-hmm.
magnificent feats. You go in and they're like, you've got the same problem as me. You've got the same problem as Mary, in the session that I did before, or
Mm-hmm.
Michael.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's like, if we knew that, people would feel like, hang on, if, the guy winning, the Brownlow or whatever it is, has the same problems as me, what am I complaining about? If he can do it through all of these same problems as me,
Mm-hmm.
I can achieve the same thing. We're all the same.
That is a really interesting point. I just want to talk about that choice, right?
Sure.
The choice that somebody who seems to be successful has achieved awards and achieved notoriety and success, that deep down inside they've got the same problems as me. So
Mhm.
what is different between them and me? Is
Bingo.
choice.
Yes.
Wow. That's really powerful,
Yeah.
knowing that we
And
all
people will
have things
say
to work on.
Karim, but you don't know about my story, right?
Yeah.
You don't know
Yeah.
about this. I've had it
Yeah.
much worse, right? And it's sort of like they want to believe that their problem is bigger
Yeah. Yeah.
because it means that they don't have to show up. It
Mm.
means that people can be like, oh gosh, poor you.
Mm.
And it's not to say that I don't want to sound insensitive.
Mm.
It's like, yes, those things happen, but what do you want to do about it?
Mm.
How, in fact, can we actually leverage those things,
Mm.
right? And what
Mhm.
people don't understand is that whenever I bring on a client and they're told me that they've had adversity in their life, I know in that moment, 100% certainty that that person, the more adversity that they've had, is actually going to become more successful.
Well, that makes sense to me when they take on their choice.
Yes.
If they
And it
sit,
becomes a decision,
when they sit in
right?
it as an excuse,
Yes.
decision, it's a good
Decision.
word,
Decide.
hey? Yep.
Life is all about like 1,000 decisions, micro decisions that you're making a day
Mm.
that allows you to be where you are, right? It's the sum total of your
Well,
conscious mind and subconscious mind.
somebody told me once that you get paid for the quality and quantity of decisions that you make in a day, right? So that's your salary, right? That's
Mhm.
why executives get paid their salary, and and different people up the hierarchy get paid, and they may appear to do less, but they make more decisions.
Yes.
But it's the quality of the decisions.
Right. And the risk.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
And understanding decision making.
Mhm. And leading from that from that position at the same time.
Just like you did from going and becoming school captain.
Mm.
So I've heard you speak about fear,
Mhm.
and as fear being something that has often been trying to protect us. But is there a way that we can utilize the fear and unearth it so that we can be more conscious and have less blockages?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the biggest killer of dreams is not someone standing over you with a gun telling you you cannot do it. There's not, someone locking you in your door or, I don't think so. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
it's an emotion.
Mm-hmm.
It's an emotion. If you just think about this, it's a feeling, right? You cannot, if I was to say to you, you cannot live out your dream just because of an emotion. You're like, that's silly. Yeah. You're in a trance. In that moment, when you're wanting to get that thing, I want you just to notice this pattern of behavior that stops you from getting there, right? And people want to like complicate things. I'm a very simplistic guy. I like simplifying information so people can actually digest and be like, oh my gosh, that actually sounds easy to understand. All of our negative behaviors that we do come from 5 negative emotions, right? That's all. If I was to break it down, that's all it is. People want to complicate things, right? But I do this, but then I do that. And I'm like, I'm so complicated. No, you're not. It all comes down to one thing, right? So those 5 emotions are anger, sadness, fear, hurt, and guilt. Out of those 5, there's always one, I reckon, that is like the king, right? That always comes out on top of killing our dreams. Fear. So, like the feeling of feeling like, a fear of judgment. I'm going to be judged, so I don't do it. Fear. A fear of making mistakes. This isn't in itself. Fear. Procrastination, right? That overwhelm of I will do it later. In that moment, you're feeling fear. A lack of execution. You don't execute because you've given the execution a meaning. Fear. Performance anxiety. When you go into sports, if I make a mistake or when I make a mistake, I'm going to spiral because they're going to cut my contract. Fear. And the list just goes on and on and on. And it's fear. And to answer your question, yes, it was to protect us once upon a time. Maybe when you're in grade 3 or in grade 4 and you didn't want to answer a question in front of the classroom. because you were worried that the kids were going to laugh at you. So you just stayed quiet. You stayed out. You didn't want to, take risks. You didn't want to show up. So you stayed quiet. And then fear becomes a friend. And you walk with it, you skip with it, you sleep with it. Until you realize that this person is like a toxic friend. It's the one that was dragging you down for so many years. And in the background, it sold you the dream of, I'm here to protect you. Don't do this because, you know what? What if you get laughed at? What if you don't make it? And we end up having this toxic friend. And it's coming to that realization that even friends need to be let go of.
That is gold. That is absolute gold. And we all have fear, even AFL footballers and
Yeah. I'm telling you, everyone's
and
got the same problem.
yeah,
It's fear. It comes down to fear.
yeah,
Yeah.
because
Some
what
people
will
just go
happen
for it
if
anyway. Yeah.
yeah. I think, I was saying to you before, this is my 50th episode. And when I did my first episode, I didn't know whether that would ever be released, right? It was an idea. I couldn't speak properly. I couldn't think by myself. I was rebuilding after having brain injury. So here I am, 50 episodes on, continuing to speak to brilliant, amazing people like you and learning every single time. And, maybe the gift of having that experience with my illness is that I have a different relationship with fear now because I've faced mortality.
Absolutely.
And now it's like, okay, I'll be decisive, I'll be discerning, but I won't be paralyzed
Yes.
because I actually even know what that feels like. So, yeah, so this is really, really, really interesting, that fear. I could see myself, yes, very visual today. I could see myself walking alongside fear. I don't know whether you've seen the children's movie Inside Out.
Yes.
I love it. I love it. I
Yes.
haven't watched the
Yeah.
second one yet. I don't know whether I'm old enough, but the first one, I love to be joy, but
Beautiful.
I've definitely got a little bit of anger in me.
Right.
And yeah, but it's really wonderful to understand these emotions that are affecting our decisions.
Yes.
So if someone who's listening today
Mm-hmm.
recognizes their own inner stutter,
Mm-hmm.
or that they notice that they're holding fear's hand really
Mm-hmm.
tightly,
Mm-hmm.
where should they begin? Is there a question they can ask themselves?
Yeah. So it's a simple process, right? It's like, hang on. Right. I want to look around and see that I'm not being chased by a tiger, that no one's chasing me with a gun. I'm maybe in my lounge room, maybe walking in the street, people around. So why am I feeling this fear? Right? It's not real. And so why is my body bringing this up now? Why does it feel like it's threatened? Why does it feel like it's in fear? It's usually a pattern. It's not a now problem. It usually goes back as far as you can remember. And so the question that you ask yourself is, what am I feeling now? I'm feeling a little bit fear. What does this moment remind me of? How far back do I remember feeling this? And it's like, what? I remember feeling this way when, mum or dad yelled at me because X, or I was worried about getting in trouble because I hit my brother and sister when I was like 6, right? And that anticipation of maybe not being enough or good enough by the teachers, and they'll talk down to you. And so you realize that you've been in a trance because you're not born with any fear. In fact, actually, you're only born with 2 fears: a fear of loud noises and a fear of falling. And so every other fear is learnt. It's not yours. And so that simple question of what does this moment remind me of? It gives away that fear. It gives that fear away. It doesn't have as much power in that moment, because it's like, hang on, I've been just believing that I am fearful. And then you can sort of like snap yourself out of it and just be like, you know what? What if I can do it to being fearful?
Yeah.
Right? Do it.
Wow.
Do it being fearful. Can I get
Yep.
an outcome while being scared? Let's just assume that you could, like, even though you recognize that fear is not real, if you look around you and there's no imminent threat, could you do it while being scared?
Mm.
Sure, you can. And so fear has less and less power over time because you're finding evidence against it. So you
Ah,
don't really need,
yeah.
yeah, you don't really need hypnosis. Like,
Yeah.
it's not something that, I mean, I can do it and it'll
Yeah.
be quick
Help.
to
Yeah.
remove that fear, but you don't really need it. If you can sit through and just feel that uncomfortableness, sometimes it's like the fact that you have to sit through, like, the uncomfortableness of feeling that fear. People want to distract themselves,
Yes.
right? They'll scroll, they'll do anything other than sit through that uncomfortableness of feeling scared.
But if you're willing to step into it and face it and then choose to do the action anyway,
Yeah.
then you're
What
on
if?
your way. And yeah, so it's a great solution.
Mm,
So, Karim, on Suddenly Different, I often come back to the idea that we are only one moment away from life changing, from being suddenly different.
yes.
So, your life changed through migration, through your early years with the stutter, through fear, through being seen by your teacher and finding your voice. And now, after sharing your stories about your mum, and I can see why you are so empowered to help others in leadership to be the best leaders they can be and to change what's happening beneath the surface.
Hmm.
When you look back at the little boy you were and the work that you do now, what do you know about being suddenly different that you could not have known at the beginning?
I think when I look back at it now, that life, God, the universe had put those obstacles in front of me to actually empower me. They gave me those obstacles so I can learn through them, I can become stronger. And those constraints, those adversity will actually benefit me. And I could use all those things, and I'm using them today, of how I can then help others and help myself to where I need to be today.
Fantastic. That's how I like to look on my life. Very similar.
Mm.
So, Karim, thank you. Thank you for taking us beyond the surface of performance and into the inner world that shapes us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
What I'm taking from this conversation is that a voice is never just a voice. Sometimes it carries fear, sometimes it carries memory, and sometimes it carries the story we made when we were young. Sometimes it carries the part of us that learned it was safer to stay quiet. And that performance is never just performance either. And a leader is never just making decisions. And an athlete is never just chasing results. So much of what shapes us is happening underneath. The beliefs we inherited, the fear that protected us, the identity we built to survive, and the inner stutter we learned to hide so well that even we forgot it was there. Karim's story reminds us that things we once thought was our limitation may become the doorway to our deepest work. And perhaps these thoughts and these beliefs are not the end of our story, they're the beginning of our true work. To our listeners, if something in today's conversation stirred something in you, perhaps begin gently. Where do you hesitate? Where do you shrink? Where do you silence yourself before anyone else has had the chance? That may be your inner stutter, and it may also be your doorway. Thank you for listening to Suddenly Different. Remember, we are only one moment away from being suddenly different. And the question is not whether change will come, but who we become when it does. Thank you, Karim.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
This has been Suddenly Different. I'm Leigh-Anne Sharland, and I'm so grateful you shared your time with me. If you felt a spark, a tear, or a moment of recognition, I hope you'll pass that gift along by sharing this show. Take a deep breath, trust your path, and I'll meet you back here soon.